I clambered up into the light, dizzy from the landing. The alien sun tore into eyes grown accustomed to darkness. I closed them. A tactical disadvantage, but I had no choice. I'd have to keep them closed until the gravity sickness subsided. The sweetness of nitrogen in the air mingled with the foul pungency of burnt carbon. I had to get away. My ears rang and my head swam as I tried to walk on. I perned back to the crash site. I couldn't believe what I voyed. Though the heat from the thrusters made it difficult to make out, I could convey just enough of the residual warmth of laser fire in the hull. It must have been a direct hit. I perned at my surroundings. The ground was a warm green in the heat of the afternoon sun. Wood, stone, and concrete shone in various hues of white, red, and yellow. Shadows poured behind tall structures in cold cerulean, but I could find none of my comrades. Shit. How far off course did I land? I switched on my comm unit. This is Captain Vathinsk, 21st Drop Troops. Is anyone out there? No reply. I modulated my pitch to veer further. The telltale warmth of living creatures flickered far off in the distance, but too far to make out who they were. I checked if the unit was faulty. It was running fine. I transmitted my message again. No reply. Again. I started to wonder if I had landed behind enemy lines. Tension rose up into my body. But then I got an idea. I changed the frequency on my communicator to a different channel. This is Captain Vathinsk of the Tanari Navy. Is anyone out there? I asked in Galactic Common. I held my breath. The next few seconds passing in tense silence. This is Lieutenant O'Brien, Terra Marine Corps. Hear you loud and clear, sir. What may I help you with? I sighed in relief. Human territory. I'm in human territory. It turned out I landed miles away from the Tanari front lines, but by sheer luck I landed nearby a human forward operating base. This is what the flickering warmth was. I told them I would join their offense, in the hope that I might be able to meet up with my own people at the front. I was pleased when they accepted so readily. But now, sitting in their wheeled troop transport and looking at my new comrades, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. The humans were brave, there's no denying that. But they are as avere as snowflies, all of them. The entire species evolved without any ability for thermoception, beyond the rudimentary contact-based one. I perned at the Terra Marines sitting beside me. They already perned daily enough with a single pair of arms and a single opposable thumb on each hand, but the lack of thermoceptor pits, coupled with their eyes being situated where the pit should be, made them pern disturbingly uncanny. I remembered during briefings, the scientists said that the humans' eyes were considerably more advanced than ours, that they saw in an entire spectrum of colours completely invisible to us, and that they could perceive depth with just their eyes much better than we did, with both eyes and pits. Squinting my pits, I tried to look in the marine with just my eyes. I turned to face from side to side, trying to align the line of sight of each side with the marine properly, one after the other. It was half my brain to sieve through all the thermoceptive data and isolate only the visual. It wasn't much. A dim monochrome outline, a shadow of what my pits void. I tried imagining perceiving everything that way. I couldn't fathom it. No. I couldn't imagine having no sense of fear at all. For a Tanari, sight was only useful for movement perception. I learnt in school that it was a trait that once helped our ancestors avoid being preyed upon while they were themselves hunting. By our standards, their whole military, their whole race was fit for disability benefits. And now I had to fight alongside them for who knows how long. Need something, General Grievous? Asked the Marine, his pitiless face looking up at me. I grunted, ignoring him. I hoped that I would find my own before this army of the Avir got me killed. Initially, I had not a shred of doubt in my mind that the humans were at a fatal evolutionary disadvantage. I knew from briefings that they did not have neural plexuses in their limbs, so I expected them to lack some dexterity. I did not know just how much. Ambidexterity for them is the exception, not the norm. And even if they were the outlier who could use one hand as well as the other, they simply do not have the coordination to use each independently enough in combat. They couldn't carry their weapons akimbo like we did. They'd have to concentrate on one hand or the other at any given time, drastically increasing response time. Add to that their lack of pits and the limited range of vision their eyes allowed. They couldn't have been effective even if they had been able to go akimbo, because they could only see less than half of their surroundings at any given time. they'd have to have both weapons facing in the same general direction to be any effective. And of course, their lack of secondary arms. Those were essential to combat. Primary arms for firearms, secondary for melee. That was what was drilled into us in training. I carried a neutron blaster in each overarm, and a monomolecular sword in each underarm. Barely enough to fend myself against the Kreia, with their larger, stronger frames and 3 pairs of arms. The humans, on the other hand, carried a single oversized ballistic weapon in their arms, which they would have to disengage to effectively wield the tiny knife they carried as a melee weapon. And another thing. While their specialized eyes gave them some spatial awareness, they simply could not vey beyond opaque obstacles, which would explain their cowering combat stance. They could not see over and around walls, so they presumed their enemy would not as well. I enlightened them of this fallacy, commanding them to stand erect like warriors, but to little effect. They still went about cowering. All presumptions I had about human combat ineffectiveness were proven false the first time we made contact. We were about 10 kilometers away from the front where the troop carriers dropped us off. The area was under heavy bombardment, so it was risky for large vehicles to go any farther. We skirted the main route, heading off at a tangent into the nearby woods, hoping to avoid the artillery fire altogether, and come out into the trenches at the other end of the woods. About 2 or 3 kilometers in, the Marines in the platoon I was attached to stopped dead in their tracks. "Something's not right," said the officer leading the group. I perned over the area thoroughly, manipulating my piz to vey as far as I could. I found nothing. I turned towards the jumpy officer to snap at him. "There," he said, raising his weapon. The 5 Marines marching at the front beside me opened fire simultaneously. Instantaneously, a Kreia stalker decloaked where the Marines were directing fire, covered in their own aircar. Then another, and another. "They're flanking us," yelled a Marine at the rear. I whipped around to vey 4 more Kreia decloaking. This time they had the drop. I could vey they were too near for the Marines to be effective. I raised my own weapons and rushed in. By the end of the entire ordeal, 10 Kreia and 7 Terran Marines lay dead. And I would have been lying if I said I didn't owe my life to those 7 Marines. It seemed that Kreia cloaking technology had gotten better since the last conflict. They were now able to come down to 50 meters near a vigilant Tanari, and still go undetected. I thought perhaps the technology was not so well developed on the spectrum the humans saw, but the humans stated that the stalkers were just as invisible to them as they were to me. But how? I asked. It seemed human eyes did have one similarity with our own. They were exceptionally adept at noticing things in motion, except they were better at it multiple times over. They were so good at it, in fact, that they could catch the distortion caused by light refraction through the Kreia's cloaked body while they were in motion from over 100 meters away. But even then, I was skeptical. I saw the human victory over a Kreia ambush party as a fluke. I was proven wrong again, once we reached the front. Our tacticians had projected that human lines would have been overrun in a matter of weeks. We had some idea of their accuracy with firearms, but we discounted that factor. After all, a human would need to hit a Kreia a minimum of 10 times with one of their standard weapons to completely incapacitate them. A Kreia would only need to hit a human once with one of their firearms, or close him with a sword. Kreia had 4 times the number of firearms engaging at any one time per soldier, and ran almost twice as fast as humans. We should not have discounted human accuracy. When we reached the front, I saw firsthand the range at which the humans operated their firearms. They were framed ballistic projectiles downrange from almost a kilometer away. Kreia firearms, and our own, were only effective at a maximum of about 100 meters. Our energy weapons were much more powerful than the humans, but thermal blooming made them ineffective at longer ranges. When we discarded ballistic weaponry for energy weapons long ago, this did not seem an issue, because while our thermoceptive pitch showed us much more of what was within range than human eyes, their weakness in depth perception and inability to focus on a faraway point made long-range capability a moot point. Humans, on the other hand, never let ballistic weapons go. Their limited range of vision also gave them the ability to hone in with pinpoint accuracy on things hundreds of meters away. Couple that with their excellent depth perception and exceptional ability to spot movement. Add to that telescopic scopes and gauge rifles that had a maximum range in kilometers. Now you had a creature that could hit a can of rations from half a kilometer away. What was the use of the Kreia's power and combat prowess when they just couldn't get even remotely in range to attack? The war with the Kreia actually turned out to be an easier affair for the humans They're the wars they fought amongst themselves. All they had to do was dig a trench to avoid artillery fire and keep shooting. They didn't even have to stay in cover if there was no bombardment or airborne hostiles. Nobody would come in range fast enough to shoot back anyway. The folly in how we assessed human capability lay in the fact that we used our own condition as a normative framework against which the humans were viewed. We adamantly saw them as missing certain faculties, never realizing that they had never known those faculties to miss them. Their condition was their normal, and they adapted to their environment as a complete, able species, with the faculties they did evolve with.